Welcome to today's episode of Philozovee.
Hey.
And today we have with us our good friend Paul.
Hey there.
And we're discussing, Paul is actually very entrepreneurial. He has had a number of personal successes with developing new concepts and bringing successful businesses to market. And one of the questions I wanted to ask you today, Paul,
Sure, go ahead.
Has to do with sort of the viability of internet startups in this new era.
Yeah, well, I think pretty clearly that the internet startups that make money are viable, and the ones that don't aren't viable. So it's pretty simple, really.
So, what do you think differentiates internet startups of today from those in the right before the 2000 crash?
Well, I think the biggest difference is that the market's more mature now. The tools are better. Also, there's a much larger population online than there was like in the late 90s. And it's much easier to build systems and companies now. And also, there's more consumers are comfortable shopping online and doing things online. So it's actually, from those of us who've used the internet all along, we haven't noticed the change. But the reality is, there's a much larger viable market for internet businesses now. So actually, and it's much easier to create them and to learn and pivot and do iterative development. So I think that the idea of internet startups is a lot more viable now than it was 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think about kind of the recent outlandish valuations that some of these smaller concept startups are able to net?
Well, I think the valuations are always correct, right? I mean, the valuation's in the eye of the buyer, right? So, if Facebook pays $1 billion for Instagram, or that's because it was worth it to them. That's why. So, or if an investor puts money in at some crazy number, some number that I would never have invested in, like why would anyone invest in Foursquare? I can't imagine it, but someone likes to, and they did, and it was the right number because it was the professionals, and they chose it.
Yeah.
I think it's always.
I guess what I'm referencing is not so much these larger, more successful startups.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm talking about is stuff that has come out of like Y Combinator or some of these other, incubating, these.
Well, I think those are. I mean, Y Combinator does a terrific job. I mean, one of their fundamental premise and their guiding principle for all of the startups is the primary metric they track is their weekly growth rate, and the belief is if you're growing at what were the numbers? If you're growing at 1%, it means you haven't figured out what you're doing. If you're growing at 10%, it's a total blockbuster and you're a billionaire. If it's growing at 5 to 7% a week, you've got something really good. And
now, are we talking? Of course, this isn't revenue growth, but user base.
Either one. Ideally, it's revenue growth, or if it's either revenue or active users, depending what phase you're in.
Yeah.
But ideally, it's revenue growth.
Okay.
And then that's the reason, because they focus the companies completely on that growth number, and because the definition of a startup is a company whose goal is rapid growth. Then what it means is that when VCs will say they'll have a lot of stories about what they want to invest in, but the reality is it's very simple. They want to invest in fast-growing companies, and almost nothing else is relevant actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So since they focus on that, their companies come out and are really well suited. It's exactly what the VCs are looking for, and so they tend to raise money and do well.
Yeah. But what about? I mean, unfortunately, a lot of these social media companies who came to market and they IPO'd, and they performed terribly post IPO. Facebook was notorious, dropped to 17 at one point. Another one is Zynga. That was another one that crashed terribly. Now,
but for example, like that's to me, Zynga. I don't know why they ever had a high valuation, because it's purely a hit-driven company.
Yeah.
So they're gonna those six. They don't have like a steady fast growth strategy.
Or how about Groupon? Groupon also suffered.
They
pretty
should
significant crash.
They should have taken the money from Google. When Google offered them $6 billion. But the thing is that Groupon's not really a technology company, right? All they did was they found a way to do performance advertising for they found a way to, for the Yellow Pages market, they found a way to do performance advertising instead of ordinary display advertising, because it's, it's performance driven. It's just, and that was good, but the problem is that it doesn't scale up super well, because when you go from 1,000 to 2,000 to 3,000 salespeople, each incremental salesperson is worse than the last one, and each incremental customer is worse than the last one, and their business model just can't scale up because it's so
diminishing returns.
It's manual intensive, exactly.
Yeah.
So just companies like that, like I wouldn't have well, I don't know, it's hard to say. But everyone's got their own beliefs, right? So some investors like investing in stuff like Foursquare, and some people wouldn't. And then in the end, their portfolio return rates will show how that goes.
Yeah, that's right. Are you a TechCrunch reader?
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay. Do you get the feeling when you're reading TechCrunch that there's just a lot of crappy ideas these days that are getting funding?
Really crappy, yeah.
Yeah.
But then again, the VCs that I've met are really intelligent people, so I don't think they would invest. So
yeah, but that could have been said, before 2000 as well, right? I mean, you did have Berkeley graduates doing the same type of investment at that time as well. I mean, you've got fund managers that obviously know how to do valuation. They understand how to
true. But at the time, companies with very little traction really could go public. And so it was rational that if you found a team that was going to be able to do that, it was rational. I mean, what was irrational was anyone who was buying those stocks. If you're the one creating the companies, that was really rational. Yeah. And in early stage investors, they're sort of, it's rational to create companies in an environment where you can sell them for massive amounts of money.
Yeah.
What was strange is why public investors were paying that much for stocks. But hey. Then again, the internet, in some ways, like look at Amazon. It was one of those stocks that was super high valued, and now it's worth more than it ever was, right? So
Amazon?
Yeah.
Amazon's like 3,500 PE right now, isn't it? Some outlandish.
What it is, but if you take out how much they spend on R&D, though, right? So their revenue is massive, but they spend a huge amount on R&D. And so you either believe in Jeff Bezos.
Is that true, or is it that their margins are minuscule?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know enough about it. But
I believe it's their margins are minuscule.
I wouldn't invest in Amazon myself. But the fact that they were during the bubble, they were mostly valued completely on hope, and now they've grown a large business. Now, whether that's something I
think they should do is spin off Amazon Web Services and make that a separate entity. Because that to me is a value, a source of value that is just going to be dragged down by the
lower margin other stuff. Sure, it's possible. Yeah, it's possible. But then again, I thought when they first came out with that, I thought it was a crazy side project, and then of course it's done very well.
Yeah.
And I thought it should be a separate business, but then again, it's done well. I mean, but I don't know. So, yeah.
Okay, so what do you think in today's environment? What do you think is key? For someone who is interested, to perhaps bring their idea to market, considering that there are so many ideas now that are getting funding, and maybe the VCs are being a bit more selective, or is it just that there aren't really that many good ideas, out anymore, like any game-changing ideas like Square or things like this?
Yeah, no, I think I don't know. There's a lot of good ideas around, I think, and I think that right now there's a lot of seed funding available, but the VC funding is harder to get. But if you have a good opportunity, if you've achieved a fast growth company, I think you'll always be able to raise money for it.
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of good ideas and good opportunities out there, but you can never really tell. Like when you're reading TechCrunch, a lot of the things sound zany, but if you actually meet the people behind it, you'll find out they've got a bigger plan or story than you'd imagine.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, I've just personally been turned off a lot by a lot of the ideas that have been churned out.
Yeah.
Especially reading through TechCrunch and whatnot. I just can't believe people fund some of those concepts.
No, I can't.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which it makes me think that we're sort of getting to that point where it's very reminiscent of the .com era before the crash.
Yeah. But but still, some of the ideas that are. A lot of things are about execution. I mean, like the guys at Optimizely just raised a really huge round, but their revenue's growing at 400% a year. They're doing tens of millions in revenue.
Oh yeah.
And they're a relatively small company. And,
well, I mean, even in .com, there was still Google, and there were a number of companies that came out that were successful business models.
Yeah.
It's just unfortunate. You don't really hear a lot of the great ideas that you were hearing maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Some of the companies like Square, I mean, they're just really great, man. I mean,
That's a beautiful product.
yeah,
it's
isn't it?
Especially pay by name. If pay by name really happens, that'll be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.